What up guys, welcome to my Dragonflight Havoc Demon Hunter PvP guide. In this guide I'm going to show you how to effectively play my favorite Demon Hunter build. A build that has revolutionized Demon Hunter gameplay for Dragonflight. The way it does damage is so much different than what we are used to. Usually Demon Hunters were known for their constant pressure with Chaos Strikes and Blade Dances. But all that has changed and let's see why. This, I believe, is the best Demon Hunter build at the moment. Of course there are things you can tinker with, for example, you don't need Fel Barrage, you can instead get Furious Glaive, take 1 point out of Serrated Glaive and put it into either Inner Demon or Restless Hunter, depending on your playstyle. Restless Hunter will give you a bit more mobility, however it won't increase your immediate bursts, as the 50% Blade Dance damage won't apply until you leave Demon form, but Inner Demon will give you that extra damage right away. For now I still prefer to play Fel Barrage, as you can use this to bait interrupts, allowing you to then free cast High Beam without getting interrupted. You could also take Fel Barrage out and to go with Relentless Onslaught, however Chaos Strike is really not our main spender anymore, so you won't get much value from this. This talent by far will be your highest damage source, and as such you will get every throw glaive modifier you can get from both your spec and class talent trees. Furious Throws is the reason Chaos Strike is no longer our main spender, as this talent makes throw glaive costs 25 fury, but throw a second glaive at the target. This talent is a must, it is not negotiable, the entire build does not work without this. However, you will notice that throw glaive doesn't do that much damage itself, and as such you might be asking yourself why would you want to throw a second one and sacrifice 25 fury to do so. Well, the reason is simple, it's because Soul Rend stacks. You can even throw glaive twice in a row, which would add up to 4 hits, and all those 4 hits will stack on top of each other, creating a very strong dot effect on your target. You will notice that I didn't take Rage Fire, and I'm pretty sure you're finding that odd. The reason I'm not taking it is because even though on paper it's a pretty good ability, it does quite good damage, when it comes to practice matters this is not consistent at all. You have very little control over the explosion, you will not always be within melee range of your target when Immolation Aura decides to expire. The reality is, even though what it says sounds pretty good, this damage won't even crack top 8 of your damage sources. This talent, Fodder to the Flame, is incredibly powerful. Every single Demon Hunter, doesn't matter what build you're going with, if you are playing PvP, you must have this talent. What this does is periodically summon a demon to attack you. That demon will do very little damage, and since you're a very mobile class, don't be worried about it. In my opinion, it is very good that the demon does damage, because you can keep the demon around when you think you'll be polymorphed, rooted, or suffer from any other breakable crowd control ability. The demon will damage you, and thus break the crowd control the enemy team played on you. On top of that, since this is a throwing glaive build, you will very easily and very often sacrifice the demon passively, and when the demon gets sacrificed, it splashes for a lot of damage and heals you for 25% of your maximum health. This ability is one of the reasons Demon Hunters are so tanky at the moment. A 25% maximum HP heal is insanely powerful, and I guarantee you that without this ability, Demon Hunter wouldn't have made it into the S tier on my previous tier list video. Know your enemy is also a must-have, and some Demon Hunters might find this contradictory, since I'm also using Any Means Necessary, which benefits from Mastery, while Know Your Enemy benefits from Critical Strike chance. But the truth is that Any Means Necessary is only here to boost our The Hunt skill. The Hunt is our big burst ability, this does a lot of damage, and it's nature damage. Any Means Necessary transforms that nature damage into chaos damage, and thus making it benefit from our mastery. Another skill we can't pass on is Essence Break. Essence Break is on a very short cooldown for what it does. The slash damage this skill does is pretty much a weaker version of Paladin's Wake of Ashes. However, for the next 4 seconds, your Chaos Strike and Blade Dance damage is increased by 80%, and this will make our Light Burst possible. Now to the PvP talents. Chaotic Imprint is a must-have, however this does not benefit from Any Means Necessary passive, an interaction which I'm not sure is intentional or if it's just a bug for now. I will go ahead and say that probably this should be intentional, because otherwise our soul rend damage would be increased by our mastery, and that would make us do as much damage as warlocks and shadow priests. Which is something we both know Blizzard won't let happen. So, even though Chaotic Imprint does not benefit from this passive, it still increases your throw glaive damage by quite a bit, as its damage will be magic instead of physical. The reason magic damage is almost always better than physical damage is because physical damage gets reduced by armor. However, magic damage only gets affected by abilities or by Demon Hunter's passive Demonic Wards, which reduces magic damage taken by 10%. And as such, in theory, if you would play only against other Demon Hunters or Death Knights, then you would never play this, but in reality, 2 classes are not enough to make you change your build. However, when you queue into the arena and you see both a Demon Hunter and a Death Knight on the other side, at that moment you should consider another alternative. Next up, Detainment. This PvP talent is one of the reasons Demon Hunter is so good in solo queue arena. Effectively, what this does is make your Imprison ability an instant cast Cyclone on a 45-second cooldown. In my opinion, this is a must-have for solo queue, as Imprison with Detainment cannot be broken by damage, not yours, not your teammates, and not your enemy's self-inflicted damage, making this such a valuable solo queue crowd control ability to have. Remember that you can also use this offensively, not just as a cross crowd control skill, and even though the use in that scenario is quite niche, with experience you will eventually start to realize that sometimes it is worth it to use this on a low HP kill target, only when you are 100% certain that not you and not your teammates can finish him off. What that will do is give you a few seconds to set up decent crowd control on the enemy healer, it will give your kill target time for his defensives to wear off, and it will give you and your teammates time to position and coordinate your offensive abilities to finish him off right as he comes out of Imprison. Be very careful when using Detainment offensively, as you might block your teammate's burst window, making you lose the game right after. Next up we have Reverse Magic. This is one of the best utility abilities in the game, as it allows you to remove all harmful magic effects from both you and your nearby teammates, and on top of all that, if possible, it sends them back to the enemies who first cast them. This is unbelievably powerful, every Demon Hunter should have this PvP talent, it's non-negotiable. This will help you in every kind of scenario, it will boost your crowd control, your damage output, your teammates' mobility and defense. It's just an amazing ability, just always get it, always play with it, and don't even think about removing it. Now to the alternatives. In case Chaotic Imprint stops being worth it, Glimpse is a very good alternative PvP talent, however it requires a very good reaction time and a good capacity to predict what your enemy will do next. If you are a Sigil enthusiast, this might make sense to you, but as you can see from my Demon Hunter tree, I hate Sigils. Sigils make absolutely no sense to how a Havoc Demon Hunter plays. We are a mobile assassin archetype class, we rely on pressure, burst and instant cast crowd control, and as such something like Sigil of Misery, even though it is a pretty good ability, and it is instant cast, it does have a delay. Now you can choose to either get used to that and use this 2 seconds before your Imprison or your stun wears off, so that this fear takes effect right at the moment your previous crowd control expired, and as such increasing your CC chain, or you can simply forget about it and allocate your points into something like stealth detection or max HP. The last PvP talent I'm going to cover is Rain from Above. Even though this is a pretty fun ability to use, only has 1 minute cooldown and does a surprisingly high amount of damage, the reality is that as soon as the enemy team sees you use this and skyrocket up, they will simply go behind a pillar and hide behind line of sight until you get down. And since the current meta is controlled by warlocks, shadow priests and feral druids, both the warlocks and the priests will still be able to damage you from above, and your healer will be forced to expose himself in order to get within range of you, to be able to heal you up while you're getting killed by dots, or in a worst case scenario, they are directly damaging you while you're stuck in the sky. For those reasons, in the current meta, never use this. Now to your abilities. Fellblade and Immolation Aura are your main Fury builders. You want to use Immolation Aura on cooldown, With this build, this will do a lot of passive damage and make stealthy classes' life quite difficult. Fellblade is just one of my favorite abilities in the game. This is a low cooldown, moderate damage, gap closer ability that has a chance to reset its cooldown with every auto attack you do. You will notice that I put Metamorphosis here at the start, and the reason for that is because I want to get it clear that Metamorphosis is not a burst ability. I see way too many Demon Hunters using this as if this was like Paladin Wings. It really isn't. It has nothing to do with the other burst cooldowns you see on the other classes. This is not a Combustion, an Avenging Wrath, a Vendetta, Recklessness. This is an ability that will simply put you into demon form. It also gives you a 40-yard range jump, however, that should very rarely be the reason you are using this, as using a 3-minute cooldown ability as a Demon Hunter just for the sake of closing a gap makes no sense. As such, you should use this to either start or maintain pressure when you need it. I often use this at the start of the match, just because pretty much everyone believes that Metamorphosis is our big damage ability, and as such, just using this at the start is enough to scare the enemy team into using 1 or 2 defensives. Now to your spenders. Your main spending ability is Blade Dance. This will give you amazing cleave, it has very high damage, and thanks to Trail of Ruin, this will incur an additional dot on your enemy. And since this is mainly a dot build, that is exactly what we want. Glaive, as I said earlier, is what procs Soul Rend, and Soul Rend is by far our hardest hitting damage source. You should never be sitting on 2 charges of Glaive. However, sometimes it is good to have 1 charge in your pocket, so that when the demon from Fodder to the Flame comes up, you have a way to instantly execute it. Chaos Strike isn't going to do much in this build, and as such, you will be using this to dump Fury when you have nothing else to press. You will also have to use 2 of these in your Light Burst rotation that I will explain now. Havoc Demon Hunter Light Burst is very simple. You will basically want to use High Beam into Essence Break and follow it up with Blade Dance followed by 2 Chaos Strikes. Ideally, you want to be able to fit both Blade Dance and your 2 Chaos Strikes within the 4 seconds of Essence Break. And the whole idea of doing High Beam and Essence Break together is that you will fit these 4 seconds within the 6-second transformation that the Demonic Talent will provide to your High Beam ability. If you have no Fury to cast High Beam, all you have to do is use 1 Fel Blade to jumpstart your Light Burst rotation. With that said, this is what your Light Burst rotation will look like. Now to your Heavy Burst rotation. Your Heavy Burst rotation is very simple. The only thing that changes is that now you use the Hunt at the start of your Light Burst rotation. With that said, this is what it looks like. Also, always remember to throw Glaive before you High Beam, as Serrated Glaive increases its damage by 20%. Now that you understand both the Light Burst rotation and the Heavy Burst rotation, every time you want to burst, ideally, you will want to have executed a demon spawned from Fodder to the Flame right before you started. What that will do is make you consume that demon's soul, increasing your damage dealt by 20% for the next 15 seconds. This is very easy to say, however, in practical terms, you have very little control on when you spawn a demon. And since this is a Glaive build, just by doing your normal damage rotation, you will be executing your demons, and you should never hold back on that, no matter what other people say, for 2 reasons. First one is that your overall damage will be much lower, and the second reason is because you are playing this game to have fun, and not to hold back on your Demon Hunter's power. Demon Hunter is a class that brings to life the whole concept of going all out. It is just dumb and sad to see that so Demon Hunters wait on passives, to then see a slightly bigger damage number pop on their screen, when in the reality, to make that big number happen, they lost a whole lot of smaller numbers that could have been made before it, thus creating a much bigger overall DPS. Next up, Fel Barrage. Fel Barrage is to be used as a filler. pretty much a Chaos Strike that doesn't cost Fury. However, I do like to use this to bait interrupts when I know I'm ready to burst, and what that does is make the enemy spend his interrupt on your Fel Barrage, which means that in a few seconds you can free cast I-Beam and nuke him down. Now to your mobility. Fel Rush is our main mobility source. It has a very short cooldown, it is very fast and reactive, it does a little bit of damage, and you can use this to both engage or disengage. Never ever in your life you should use this to do damage. The only situation where you would use Fel Rush as a damage dealing ability is if you were playing a very different build, where you spec into Unbound Chaos. That is quite a popular build, however let me tell you that it is very much worse than this one. If you spec into the left side of your talent build, you are effectively losing both mobility and DPS. Then we have Vengeful Retreat. This is an amazing mobility skill, it removes all snares from you and allows you to jump backwards quite a long distance. With a little bit of practice you can start using this to jump forward, and practicing that simple interaction alone will boost your Demon Hunter mobility by a lot. This is what that looks like. As you saw, all you have to do is jump, rotate your camera 180 degrees, and use Vengeful Retreat. Your last mobility skill, disregarding Metamorphosis and the Hunt, is Fellblade. I've already talked about Fellblade. This is pretty much a shorter range, faster charge, and one useful thing to know is that you can use this on a 360 level. For example, you can use this to get to a target that's on your back, just like this. Now to your defensives. Blur is your only innate self-defensive ability, and what it does is increase your dodge chance by 50%, while also reducing all damage taken by 20%. Both these effects last for 10 seconds, and are on a 1 minute cooldown. This is a very good defensive ability, mainly against melee classes, as using this while facing a rogue, a warrior, a paladin, and so on will make you significantly harder to hit. One thing to keep in mind is that dodge is only effective sensibly on a 180 degree half circle in front of you. That means that it has no effect on damage coming from the back, and one thing you might not know is that targets cannot dodge while stunned. That means that if you get stunned, your dodge chance will have no effect at all until your stun wears off. Your other very strong defensive ability is Darkness. Darkness should be mostly used to save your teammates, as this will reduce the chance that both you and your teammates within the cloud will get hit by quite a lot. Just remember that despite being a mobile class, you still have to play defensively when needed. And jumping on top of your healer and dropping Darkness is one of the most powerful team-wide defensive combos you can do. Another very strong ability that I need to talk about is Netherwalk. I did not spec into Netherwalk because it would take 3 points to get here, and if I take those 3 points from anywhere else, my damage will suffer greatly. However, I must say that this is an unbelievably strong defensive cooldown. This is pretty much a mobile heist block, and if in the future we can spare 3 points to get this, we should do it. Now let's talk about Demon Hunter crowd control. Disrupt is your standard 10-yard range interrupt. There's not much to say about this. Just like with any other interrupt, make sure you interrupt the right spell school. For example, if an Holy Priest were to use a Shadow ability and your goal is to disrupt his healing capabilities, not his damage dealt, then you should never interrupt a Shadow skill. You should instead wait for him to use an Holy Spell School ability so that you will lock him out of all the other Holy School spells. Prison with a PvP talent, I've already talked about this. This is your 45-second instant cast Cyclone. You can use this to cross-crowd control a target and make sure it doesn't get broken, or to postpone a kill on your kill target, as I've explained earlier. Chaos Nova is your AoE instant cast stun. This ability is incredibly powerful, and thanks to the Isolated Prey talent, if you get a multi-stun, that's awesome. If you only hit one target, that is also awesome because they will be stunned for longer. Fel Eruption is your single target ranged instant cast stun. You can use this to cross crowd control or to make sure that your entire I-beam will hit the target. The Hunt of course will root the target, however that should never be your primary usage. Reverse magic, as said earlier, can effectively reflect crowd control to the enemy who first cast it. Also, remember to Spectral Sight when you need to get someone out of stealth. This ability helps immensely against rogues and feral druids, for example, and if you spec into Lost in Darkness as I do, you will have a 6-second window after dealing or taking damage to still reveal them. Another very strong PvP tool we have is Consume Magic. This ability will instantly remove one beneficial magic effect from your target. On a 10-second cooldown, this is very strong, and you should be using it whenever you get the chance. You can use this to dispel Paladin's Blessing of Protections, Priest Shields, Druid Healing Overtime effects, and so on. Now that I have explained all the Demon Hunter systems and how it works, I would like to reinforce the idea that most Demon Hunter abilities are highly versatile and that can be used both offensively and defensively. Remember that as a Demon Hunter, your best defense is a good offense. That is the case because you have built-in Leech, which works as lifesteal, and that means that the more damage you do, the more you will heal yourself. A prime example of this is the Hunt, which is both your highest burst ability and one of your best defense. When you use the Hunt on an enemy, that enemy becomes marked for 30 seconds, and during those 30 seconds, 25% of all the damage you do to them is returned to you as healing. These 25% do stack with your built-in Leash, increasing your overall healing for upwards of 40%. Another thing I must say is that High Beam has incredible synergy with Know Your Enemy because of the talent Looks Can Kill. This talent makes High Beam hits guaranteed critical strikes, which means that every single High Beam hit will benefit from Know Your Enemy passive. Those two talents put together, plus Isolated Prey bonus 25% damage, combined with Serrated Glaive 20% bonus damage to High Beam, means that High Beam is the single hardest hitting directly ability you have in your kit. If you are a Night Elf, remember that Shadowmeld is an amazing defensive ability. You can use this to make the enemy team lose yourself as a target. Even if you get revealed right after, losing you as a target will still break any skill they were casting. You can use this, for example, to gain a couple seconds against a mage who is trying to polymorph you, those 2 seconds allowing you to Fel Rush into 10 yards of the mage, allowing you to then interrupt him. Now to the macros. As with every other class in the game, you can macro your crowd control abilities to more easily crowd control the enemy team without having to shift targets. Another macro you can use is a cast on cursor metamorphosis macro. This will make your metamorphosis instantly cast on your cursor when you press it, making it faster and more reactive. However, only use this if you can't tell what 40 yards look like, otherwise you might find yourself jumping short. This is what that macro looks like. Make sure to check the description, as I'm going to be leaving all of these macros down below, including the talent build itself. And that's it, guys. We have reached the end of our Havoc Demon Hunter PvP guide. You are now ready to take Dragonflight by storm and conquer the arena. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching this far. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. Stay safe, stay strong, and I'll see you in the arena.